God is good. Well, this is going to be an interesting week, isn't it? But why should we care about the Crusades? What was so great about the Crusades? Well, let's find out. Hello, my name is Olfa. I am a historian. But recently I have been thinking about a question. When writing about the Crusades, when talking about the Crusades, I very often get focused on the big picture. Like, why did the Crusades happen? Why did Pope Urban II call for the First Crusade? Why did people go on crusade? What happened during the siege of Antioch? Rumors travel faster than people's stories of far-off places, monstrous creatures, and saints who bled for the faith. In your neighbor's son, who says he will go and never returns. Yes, life went on, but that's beside the point. The point is that a horrible, terrible, no good, very bad thing was happening. That's right. The reason for this is a long story. Let's save it for another time. But basically, there were lots of Christians living in the Holy Land, and they needed protection. Number two, European Christians weren't the only ones with designs on the Holy Land. Muslim forces ruled most of it, and they didn't want it to fall into Christian hands. No. 3. Pope Urban II really wanted this land, and he wanted it badly enough that he decided to launch a war to take it, and thus the First Crusade began. I am, of course, talking about the Crusades, in the arrival of strangers speaking strange dialects, asking for bread and blessings on their way to the Holy Land. And after watching that video, you still have no idea what the main political issues of the time period were or what major events were happening. I know I have. Well, I want to do better than those videos do. So here at the end of every episode, I'm going to give you 3 big things to remember. 3 things that will help you understand why the Crusades happened, why they were such a big deal. Imagine yourself watching them from your doorway. They do not look like heroes. They are tired, dusty, many are barefoot. Some carry swords, others carry crosses made of simple wood. Subscribe if you want to come along for the ride as we learn what life was like during the First Crusade. Next time we're going to meet some real live Crusaders. So I'll see you then. A few carry nothing at all, except a hope that God is watching and that the road ahead will bring them closer to salvation. And then they are gone. The road swallows them, and the fields return to their quiet rhythm. Your days go on, even as the world slowly changes around you, even as Jerusalem becomes not just a name in a sermon, but a reason for war, for pride, for sorrow. You still tend your animals. You still sing while you work. You still kneel at the altar and murmur prayers for protection, for peace, for understanding. Because in the shadow of the crusade, daily life continues. It always does. Whether true or not, they shape how you see the world beyond your fields. Food is seasonal, root vegetables in the cold months, grains in the warm, salted meat if you're lucky. Hunger is a familiar companion, especially in lean years. But the taste of fresh bread, chewy, warm, and fragrant, is its own kind of joy. You've heard whispers in the marketplace, something stirring, something new. The priest has mentioned Jerusalem, a place you've only ever known in stories. There is talk of liberation, of sin, of pilgrimage, and of war, a war for God. But these words are distant, abstract. You are more concerned with planting your barley, fixing your neighbor's cart, keeping your children well. The crusade, if it is coming, feels like thunder beyond the hills. Loud, yes, but far away. Still, the ripples will reach you. How did Godfrey of Bouillon die? What about Saladin? Why is everyone always talking about Saladin? He didn't even live until the Third Crusade. Anyway, in my focus on the big things, the marshes and the sieges and the big famous people, I realized I had forgotten about the little things. What did regular people do during the Crusades? How did they live? What did they think? How did they feel? Well, that is what we're going to explore today. We're going to imagine what a day in the life was like during the First Crusade. And today we're going to time travel back to the year 1095 to find out what life was like during the First Crusade. People like you, living their lives, mending their roofs, baking their bread. So imagine yourself in the year 1095 in a quiet village in the countryside of what we now call France, or perhaps the German lands, or the Norman fields of southern Italy. The church bell marks the rhythm of your days, not clocks, not screens, just light and shadow, labor and prayer. Your home is made of timber and daub with thatch overhead and smoke curling from a small hearth. The floor is dirt, packed firm by years of footsteps. You rise before the sun, just as your parents did, and as their parents before them. The routine is steady, predictable, and sometimes that is a comfort. The church stands at the center of the village, both physically and spiritually. Its stone walls offer not only a place of worship, but a cool refuge in the summer, a dry corner in the rain. The priest speaks Latin, which you do not understand, but the rituals are familiar. The incense, the flickering candles, the murmured prayers, they wrap around you like a blanket of meaning, even when the words are distant. I love history. I read it all the time. Before there were armies, before the banners, before the sermons echoed across Europe, there were simply people. You rarely travel far. Most people never do. The road between your village and the next is muddy, pitted, and often unsafe. In taxes raised by your lord to fund armor and horses, Well, that was lovely, wasn't it? Just a nice slice of life in the Middle Ages. But that's not the whole story. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen one of those videos about what life was like during the Roman Empire or medieval Japan or whatever? Number one, the Catholic Church was trying to get control over the Holy Land, the places Jesus lived and preached. Today we're beginning our exploration of one of the most overlooked episodes in human history, the First Crusade. Led by Peter the Hermit, they marched 60 miles a day, preaching penance and carrying crosses. But after months of walking, they arrived at the river Bozenches, modern-day Antakya, with no bridge nearby. And while some fought against the Crusaders, others didn't mind having them around. In fact, the Sultan of Damascus invited Raymond of St. Gila, the Count of Toulouse, to dinner. As a gesture of goodwill, he sent a massive feast, complete with precious gifts and jewels. For example, the Byzantines were technically the rightful owners of Nicaea, and even though they shared the city with the Crusaders, they kept it on their tax rolls. Now, this arrangement didn't last long. After only 4 months, the Crusaders seized the city completely, driving the Byzantines out for good. And soon afterwards, they were on the march again, heading south toward Antioch. But they couldn't have done it without the city of Nicaea. It provided them with food, money, and shelter, and as a result it became one of the most important cities along the route to Jerusalem. Now, it wasn't perfect. For example, raids and skirmishes were common, and the threat of war with the Byzantines always loomed. But compared to the uncertainty of the open road, it was stability, and stability meant success. And while some Crusaders were suspicious, Raymond saw an opportunity. He accepted the invitation and met with the Sultan. We know that the Crusaders built churches, castles, and homes, but we don't know how the native populations fared. And in this series, we'll explore all of it, because history doesn't happen on the battlefield. It happens everywhere. That's all for today. I'm your host, and don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. We know that there were merchants, farmers, and soldiers, but we don't know what goods they traded, what they grew, or what battles they fought. We do know that the Crusaders stayed for 5 years, laying the foundations for the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem before continuing on to the south. But after that, the city fell into decline, falling back into obscurity, until archaeologists uncovered its secrets in the 1930s. The two leaders discussed the possibility of a military alliance, and Raymond decided to make a bold move. He converted to Islam. Now, it wasn't really that surprising. Back in Europe, people converted to Islam all the time, even if they went back on their word pretty quickly. But this meeting with the Sultan of Damascus didn't last long, and after Raymond left, the Crusaders attacked Damascus. Now, because of their truce, the Sultan of Damascus felt betrayed, and he retaliated by starting a rebellion in Edessa. In the end, the Crusaders pushed north, taking cities along the way. But they were far from Jerusalem, and as it turned out, they were far from united, and the local lord refusing them passage. The Crusaders had a choice, and as they fought, news spread of the People's Crusade, turning back, demoralized and defeated. The Crusaders weren't the first ones to claim it. The Emperor of Byzantium had recently taken over the city, and he wasn't happy about these newcomers. In fact, he tried everything he could to get rid of them, blockading the city, refusing to negotiate, even threatening to start a war. But the Crusaders were ready to fight, and in 1097 they seized Nicaea. Once again, the Crusaders had won, but at what cost? Now they had to defend a city, not conquer a road. To make matters worse, Emperor Alexios Komnenos didn't want to give up, and he led his army to recapture the city. While the Crusaders prepared for battle, Pope Urban II played both sides, asking Alexios to negotiate and even suggesting that the emperor join the crusade himself. In the end, Alexios agreed to share the city, but not without some reservations. In fact, most of the People's Crusade returned home except for 30,000 men and women who stayed in Anatolia. Meanwhile, reinforcements from Europe joined the original Crusaders, swelling their ranks to nearly 100,000. And with so many people, it wasn't long before supplies ran low. With winter approaching, the Crusaders needed to find a place to settle down, and they found the perfect spot in the city of Nicaea. It was close to the Mediterranean Sea. It was surrounded by farmland, and as it turned out, it was practically empty. Turn back or cross in boats. Now, crossing wasn't easy. The boats leaked. Supplies were scarce and disease spread. But when they finally made it to the other side, they found themselves in an unfamiliar land. The Byzantines, Romans, and Arabs spoke different languages, had different customs, and since the Crusaders weren't exactly diplomats, relations were tense. In fact, some reports say the Crusaders slaughtered everyone in a village, mistaking them for enemy. And by the time they reached Antioch, they were exhausted, hungry, and desperate. And we start with a mystery. Imagine if someone told you they were going to help build a church, and instead they burnt it down. If they could take it, the rest of the way would be easier. But its ruler, an Armenian prince named Kurbas, wasn't giving up without a fight. For 42 days, the Crusaders laid siege to the city, building roads, catapults, and walls. Then suddenly, Kerberos invited them inside. Turns out he wanted them to take sides in his feud with neighboring lords, but the Crusaders had other plans. Under cover of night, the Crusaders snuck into the city, opening the gates for more of their troops. And although there was fighting over the next few days, Antioch was theirs. But victory turned to horror when the Crusaders discovered the city was almost empty. Most of the people had fled, and although they celebrated their victory, they knew they were in for a long stay. The Crusaders needed food, supplies, and allies, and this time, it wasn't the Byzantines who could help them. It was the Muslim leader of Damascus, where in 1098, that happened. And in 1990, archaeologists finally uncovered why. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, built in the 1100s. It was a masterpiece of Crusader architecture. But by the 1200s, it was ruined. What happened? Well, as it turns out, while the Crusaders had conquered Jerusalem, they hadn't conquered everything. They built this church on the site where Jesus was said to have been crucified and buried. But the Muslims who still held parts of the city refused to let Christians enter. So, to get to this holy site, pilgrims started digging a tunnel underneath the Muslim quarter. And in 1148 it collapsed, bringing down part of the mosque above it. But this isn't the only secret lurking beneath Jerusalem, because today we're talking about secrets from the very start. The Siege of Antioch. In 1097, the People's Crusade set out for the Holy Land. Antioch was a key city on the road to Jerusalem. Now, while we think of Muslims as being enemies of the Crusaders, it's important to remember that not all Muslims were alike. In 1098, Godfrey of Bouillon and Raymond IV of Toulouse argued over who should lead the Crusaders. Now there was one problem. The Crusades might have been a religious mission, but that didn't mean they weren't political too. Now unfortunately we don't know much about everyday life in Crusader Nicaea. The story of the Crusades is often filled with violence, conquest and war, but it's also filled with intrigue, politics and compromise. When we think of the Crusades, we imagine soldiers marching, sieges, and conquests. Yet how did the people live within these Crusader states? How did they eat? What did they wear? And what about their palaces? Today we'll meet the elite of the Crusader kingdoms and see how they lived, from their clothing to their castles and everything in between. Yet who would paint a princess in the kingdom of Jerusalem? Her cousin, Queen Sibylla of Jerusalem, requests her presence at court. Time to change into a riding habit, a simpler tunic with a girdle to keep it tight to her body. Her veil is set aside for now. As the cousins greet each other, they speak in French, the language of the court in Jerusalem, even though neither was born there. At the lakeshore, they pause to watch fishing boats haul in their nets full of fish. And more stable, thanks to the efforts of King Baldwin's grandfather, King Amal. Already the kitchen staff has been busy all day, butchering meat, baking bread, picking fresh vegetables, shelling fava beans and lentils, chopping herbs. It has been a cooperative effort, but now the servants will gather around the king's table. There is no silverware, only wooden knives and spoons. His mother, Queen Mary, has insisted on a grand reception, a civilization born of war and sustained by faith. We saw how the nobility lived, from the Princess Isabella of Jerusalem to Queen Mary of France, to little Baldwin, heir to the throne. But don't forget that these states were built on the labor of thousands of peasants and laborers. And for a look at their lives, watch our companion video on the archaeology of the Crusades. The visitors are escorted into the courtyard where acrobats perform. Dogs race around the young prince on horseback. Then comes the moment he loves best: tournaments. The jousting and fighting are fierce. Afterward, the competitors are invited to the palace for a celebratory feast. Later, a group of traveling minstrels will arrive. The musicians sing and dance for the amusement of the royal family. And then it is time for bed. Little Baldwin slips into a linen nightgown and says his prayers. He kisses his parents goodbye and climbs into a luxurious four-poster bed, its canopy draped with fine linen. He dreams of horses, tournaments, and adventures to come. Since the poorest servants eat with the king, they bring their own dishes and bowls. For some, these are wooden. For others, none are of silver. However, even though Jerusalem was known for its silversmiths, if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon so you never miss an upload. You can also check out our other videos, which bring history to life through engaging storytelling and stunning visuals. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next video. Those who dine with the king are dressed in simple tunics, but they are clean and mended carefully. After all, a good reputation for the king means good pay and advancement for them. And since the Crusader kings considered themselves the Lord's servants, they demanded diligence and order from their court. Now that there was peace along the borders, trade could flourish. The youngest servant, a boy of only 12, goes first. Then the ladies-in-waiting, followed by the royal family, and finally, the royal counselors. They sit down to a banquet of roasted meats, vegetables, fish from the lake, cheese and fruit. It is a rich meal fit for a king. The coastal cities of Acre and Tyre were becoming significant trading hubs. The future of the kingdom rests on his small shoulders. Young Baldwin will one day rule in his father's stead. Even at this age, he understands his duty. Like any young prince, he loves hunting, hawking and riding. When he isn't learning Latin, arithmetic or scripture, he is practicing with sword and shield. Already his teachers have noted his strength and courage. Indeed, this prosperity attracted more European Christians to settle there. Each new wave of immigrants brought more familiarity, more French language, and more knowledge of building techniques from home. They ask the boatmen if they would join them for lunch, and the men accept readily. The ladies-in-waiting serve up a midday meal of chicken, fruit, and wine. Trade and culture flowed freely between the two groups. In fact, it was cheaper for the Crusader queen to buy Arab figs than to ship them from France. And while the princesses may hold prejudice against the Muslim fishermen, they need their help to navigate this alien land. For when nobles came to the Crusader States, they brought their culture with them. But while the French language dominated, everyday speech was a mixture of local Arabic and French. The common folk didn't speak French. After all, perhaps a Frankish artist who has adapted his skills to a new land. While Isabella rides side saddle, Sybil prefers a more practical mount with a high crupper, typical of the Levant. Both women wear protective clothing against the sun. Isabella the richer sports a silk hood lined with linen. Sibylla favors a leather one with iron reinforcements. Their journey takes them to the Sea of Galilee. The Crusaders had seized control of this important waterway early on, recognizing its strategic importance. Just before crossing, they must stop at the toll station. Here they pay a tax to the Lord of the Galilee for the right to pass. Such tolls supported local lords and helped maintain the roads. Or maybe a Muslim artist working in a Christian environment. Vines grow beside orchards laden with fruit. Fields are neatly divided and well watered. The Crusader States were an agricultural society. Farms and vineyards were everywhere. Even in battle knights were accompanied by grooms to tend to their horses. With every passing year, more and more peasants settled in the region. By the end of the century, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was overwhelmingly Christian. We can't be certain, but the very question reveals how cultural exchange was a reality of daily life in the Crusader States. In this portrait, Isabella wears two distinctive garments. One is her outer tunic. These were usually simple, but for a princess, hers would be made of fine linen or wool. Beneath that, she wears a belt and a long shift. This garment reached down to her ankles and was made of the finest materials. For a woman of status, it might be silk, velvet, or linen. Yet even princesses needed to take the heat into account. So while silk might be more durable, linen was cooler to wear. Join me for this and more on Crusader life. At the height of summer, the sun blazed down on the Levant. We are here in modern-day Israel. It's hot, dry, windy, but inside this cool stone tower, Princess Isabella sips wine while her ladies-in-waiting arrange tapestries and silks. Around her are comfortable couches, not the coarse sacking favored by most women. She wears a linen dress of the finest quality, cool and loose to combat the heat. On her head sits a decorative wimple, framing her face and holding back her hair. Her court is preparing for a royal visit, the arrival of King Baldwin IV. He is young, just 13 years old, yet he already knows his role. Soon he will be crowned King of Jerusalem. His mother, Queen Mary, is nowhere to be seen. Women in positions of power were rare in the Crusader kingdoms, and she prefers to govern from faraway France anyway, leaving Baldwin to grow up in the care of his grandmother, Queen Isabella. As a princess, Isabella's father could afford her a skilled artist, someone to paint her portrait in the grand manner of contemporary France. The arrival of royal messengers breaks through Isabella's thoughts. Arriving at the courtyard, they mount their horses. As they ride along the road, we can see that the countryside has been cultivated for decades. Yet, as they approach the lake, the princesses see an Arab village. After lunch, the women return to their horses. The Kingdom of Jerusalem was growing richer. Back at the palace, dinner is being prepared. As the king enters the hall, everyone rises. A fanfare of trumpets announces the arrival of the royal heir. It is time for him to receive guests. The royal children of neighboring kingdoms have arrived, and so we end our tour of the Crusader States. Thank you for watching. Before we leave our tale of noble life during the Crusades, there's one last thing to see. Something the Crusaders themselves left behind after they departed the Holy Land. You can find it in a hidden chamber just off the main hall, tucked away and almost forgotten. Such artifacts blend religious devotion with artistic excellence. This imposing piece of armor, designed to protect the wearer's head during the fiercest clashes, offers a glimpse into the dangers faced by the Crusader nobility. A seal ring featuring a lion, perhaps representing strength and courage, might have belonged to a powerful baron, connecting us to their lineage through an object they once owned. Crafted with religious iconography, this functional item offers a unique blend of practicality and piety. Queen Melisende of Jerusalem, with her quiet strength and strategic brilliance, navigated the complexities of medieval politics while shattering gender norms. Her legacy reminds us of the indomitable spirit that can thrive even in the face of societal constraints. More than just a historical event, it was a crucible that forged new identities, beliefs, and landscapes. If you found this episode enjoyable, please show your support so we can continue sharing captivating historical stories. Dive into other narratives that bring history to life and ignite your curiosity. Your engagement fuels our passion for storytelling. If you have a favorite moment from our time together, a character that resonated with you, or an artwork that left an impression, share your thoughts in the comments below. Connecting with you enriches our journey. As always, until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and keep exploring the boundless wonders of history. The legacy of the Crusades continues to resonate, reminding us of the complexities of faith, ambition, and the human condition. So as we step back from the tapestry of the past, we carry with us the echoes of Crusader stories, their triumphs and struggles, their artistry and resilience. May their tales inspire us to explore history as grand narrative and to appreciate the nuances that make each era, each individual, and each work of art truly remarkable. Then there's Richard the Lionheart, a warrior whose deeds of valor echoed through the ages. Yet even a legendary warrior grappled with the burdens of command, proving that heroism comes at a cost. From the heights of glory to the depths of despair, his tale captures the essence of medieval warfare and each artifact contributes to the tapestry of life during the Crusades, allowing us to peer into the daily lives of the Crusader nobility. Fragments of a glazed tile bearing a coat of arms serve as a silent testament to the ambitions of the Crusader nobility. These fragments, once part of a larger decorative ensemble, hint at the desire for prestige and lineage that drove the expansion of the Crusader States. As we continue our exploration, we encounter a sealed clay document, a tangible link to the legal and administrative aspects of Crusader society. Though the contents of the document remain hidden beneath its seal, its very existence speaks volumes about the systems of governance that once held sway over these lands. Scratches and dents marring its surface, telling tales of clashes against both earthly foes and celestial ones. It stands as a potent symbol of the risks they willingly took in defense of their beliefs in their homeland. Interspersed among the more martial objects are delicate items like a bronze mirror. We've seen how the clash of cultures gave rise to new artistic forms, and how the relentless march of time left its mark on both the physical and cultural landscape. This seemingly mundane object, used for personal grooming, offers a glimpse into the lives of the Crusader nobility beyond the battlefield. Crafted with intricate detail, it reflects not only the vanity of its potential owner, but also the surprisingly refined aspects of medieval culture. These treasures continue to unfold, revealing further glimpses into the lives of the Crusader nobility. An ivory pyxis, intricately carved with biblical scenes, hints at the religious fervor that permeated every aspect of medieval life. Used for storing precious substances, this ornate box served as a constant reminder of the values held dear by those who owned it. A 13th century silver point depicts St. George slaying a dragon. This emblem of courage and piety may have adorned the belongings of a Crusader knight, serving as a personal emblem or a gift bestowed upon them for valor in battle. It encapsulates the intertwining of warfare and religion that defined the Crusader experience. Nearby, a lead seal matrix bearing the imprint of King Baldwin IV's crest, a six-pointed star within a Jerusalem cross, stands as a tangible link to the kingdom's royal lineage. These objects aren't merely historical relics. They are testimonies to the lives lived by the Crusader nobility. A 12th century belt hook, possibly owned by a knight, reveals the practical aspects of medieval life, offering insight into the everyday challenges faced by even the most elite members of society. It's crafted with a leaf design, likely intended to hold the wearer's cloak securely while battling the elements and engaging in combat. This simple tool serves as a reminder of the harsh realities faced by medieval knights, contrasting with their often romanticized image. Here, lit by a single lantern, sits a table piled high with objects from another time, another world. It is an archive, a collection, and to us, a treasure trove, the archive of the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem. These are the objects left behind by the elite of the crusading world, and they hold secrets waiting to be uncovered. Let's take a closer look. This ivory pendant depicts the Virgin Mary suckling Jesus. Its intricate details, including Mary's veil and robes, showcase the skill of medieval artisans. A knight's helmet lay nearby, its dented surface bearing silent witness to countless battles. Each artifact tells a part of their story. An ornately carved bone comb suggests the attention paid to personal appearance even in a military setting, revealing a side of medieval life often overlooked in popular imagination. Now, let us take a moment to remember the captivating stories of power and intrigue we've explored together throughout this journey. But our journey doesn't end here. We've glimpsed the evolution of a world through the prism of Crusader art, architecture, and daily life. As we bring this episode to a close, let's pause to consider the enduring impact of the Crusades. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. So when we're thinking about the Middle Ages, what comes to mind? Castles and knights and horses, maybe peasants or serfs. Or how about diseases that wiped out 60% of Europe's population? Famine, war. You are standing outside a village bakery in northern France, waiting for your freshly baked loaf of bread. It's a quiet morning. Church bells ring softly in the distance. After all, it was one of the bloodiest periods in history, resulting in the deaths of millions. And yet, when we try to imagine what life was like then, Most of us picture battles and bloodshed, but the Crusades lasted for over 200 years. For example, there was a huge demand for goods in the Holy Land, and merchants who could supply them were eager to do so. All they wanted to do was live their lives in peace. You'll watch as a family huddles together, trying to stay safe inside their house. A father shields his young children with his body, whispering, life during the Crusades was not all sunshine and roses. In fact, it was downright scary. You see, while most people tried to stay out of the fighting, they couldn't always succeed. Sometimes their towns and villages were attacked and destroyed. Families were torn apart and people had to flee their homes and become refugees. Communities came together to celebrate holidays and mourn the dead. And families created their own traditions and rituals to mark the passage of time. Parents told stories around the hearth, teaching their children about their heritage and instilling in them the values they would carry throughout their lives. In the end, life during the Crusades was a complicated mix of fear and normalcy, destruction and creation, despair and hope. It was a time of great change and upheaval, but also of resilience, courage, and the unwavering strength of the human spirit. They left everything behind, hoping to find safety somewhere else. Across the street, an elderly woman clings to her rosary, muttering a prayer. As the Crusades gained momentum, you might have found yourself caught between two powerful forces. On one side, the Muslim rulers who had controlled Jerusalem for centuries and were determined to keep it. On the other, European Christians who believed they had a holy duty to reclaim the city. And if you were a Jew living in Europe, things weren't much better. During the First Crusade in 1095, Pope Urban II called for a holy war to take back Jerusalem from Muslim control. He promised God would help the Christians and protect them on their journey. But along the way, the troops often targeted Jews, believing they were enemies of Christ. In some places, entire Jewish communities were wiped out. A young couple embraces, knowing that they may never see each other again. For one thing, there were a lot of changes happening. As Christian influence grew, churches were built, and monasteries became centers of learning. But all this change didn't come without its challenges. Different Christian groups started fighting each other, and there was a lot of tension in the air. Plus, with so many people heading to the Holy Land, diseases spread like wildfire, and with limited medical knowledge, it was hard to stop outbreaks of deadly illnesses such as the bubonic plague. For weeks, the city has been under siege and food is running low. Soon, the walls of Jerusalem will be breached, and the citizens will have to flee or face capture by the enemy. They worked, they played, they prayed, they hoped for a better future, and they coped with whatever challenges came their way. Sure, sometimes there were problems like attacks or disease outbreaks, but most of the time, life just went on, kind of like today. Maybe we don't have to be too surprised by that. After all, humans are pretty adaptable creatures. No matter what happens, life always finds a way to go on. This led to an increase in trade and wealth for many, and as more and more people started heading to the Holy Land, entire communities grew around the idea of pilgrimage. Merchants sold their wares in the marketplace. Children played in the streets and visitors from all over the world came to experience the wonders of Jerusalem. The Temple Mount stood proudly in the distance, a symbol of hope and faith. You recall how just a few years ago, the city had been bustling with activity. Pilgrims made their way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre where Jesus was crucified and buried. Soldiers patrolled the ramparts, ensuring the safety of the city. The air was filled with the sounds of hammers as builders worked on a new hospital, and at night, the stars twinkled above the city, reflecting in the pools of the nearby Hinnom Valley. Along the way, travelers needed places to stay and eat, so inns and restaurants popped up to meet their needs. Some people even made money by selling religious relics said to have miraculous powers. Others became skilled builders, creating churches and shrines along the pilgrimage routes. Overall, the Crusades were a big deal, but day-to-day life went on as usual. Markets bustled, children played, and families gathered around tables for meals. It may sound hard to believe, but for most people, life during the Crusades was pretty normal. During that time, millions of European Christians headed east, hoping to win back the Holy Land for Christianity. While historians argue about their motives and legacy, those who lived through them just got on with their lives. The men who stopped by the village were Crusaders. Originally, they were part of a force of thousands. Many were noble knights eager for adventure or common men hoping for land and riches. But now they are on their way home. Having lost the battle against Salah, the smell of fresh bread mixes with the sweet scent of nearby wildflowers and the sounds of birds tweeting in the trees. Traveling in medieval Europe was dangerous business. There were bandits, rival armies, and wild animals to worry about. Not to mention the roads were rough and uncomfortable. Still, you managed to reach your destination safely. You have made it home, but the fighting is far from over. Over the next 200 years, 8 major crusades will take place. And while most people will not join the armies, life will still go on as normal. People will plant crops, care for animals, make tools, clothes, and furniture, cook meals, get married, and raise families. It would be easy to assume that the constant threat of war meant everyone was tense and anxious all the time, but that probably wasn't true either. Suddenly, a small group of men walk into the village. Their armor glints in the sunlight and one carries a sword. Immediately, the villagers go silent and drop to their knees. As the men approach, they hear the leader speak. In the name of God, the holy, the merciful, the compassionate, the merciful, I demand food and lodging for the men and animals. With heads bowed, you hand the man your bread and he thanks you. God will reward you for your generosity, he says, before heading out of town with his men. They have passed a hat among the villagers, receiving money, food and supplies, which they will need for the journey ahead. Before long, they disappear down the road, and the village slowly returns to normal. These are the things that come to my mind. However, what if I told you there was a different way to look at it? What if I told you, instead of looking at the major events at the time, we could look at daily life in the Middle Ages? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing exactly that. More specifically, we will be looking at daily life during the Crusades. Remember to stay until the end because I have a special gift for you all. The year is 1189 AD. As the sun rises higher in the sky, children run past, playing a game of tag. A farmer walks by, carrying a basket of eggs. A woman calls out to her husband, helping him carry a large animal hide. Everything seems normal, peaceful even. But the truth is, these men who just passed through town are part of a huge Christian army that is preparing for war. In 1187, the Christian kingdom of Jerusalem was under siege by Muslim forces led by the great warrior Saladin. By 1189, the whole of Jerusalem had fallen to the Muslims, and Christian Europe was outraged. Soon, armies would be gathering, preparing to take Jerusalem back. That is why this scene is taking place in a small French village. Men, women, and children are working, playing, and trading as usual, seemingly unaware of the shadow looming on the horizon. It might seem odd to think about the daily life of people during the Crusades, but while they may be returning empty-handed, their journey home will not be easy. While the Crusades often caused unrest and uncertainty, they also brought some benefits. We know that because, unlike the warriors and leaders, most people weren't interested in spreading Christianity or conquering new lands. Today, you find yourself in Jerusalem. The year is 1148 and you are getting ready to defend the city against an attack by Danish mercenaries known as the... As you witness the unfolding tragedy, you remember a time when life was peaceful in the holy city. But now all that remains is despair. As the Crusaders enter the city, you turn away, unable to bear witness to the destruction that follows. If you were a Christian living in the Holy Land, things were especially tough. Even if you managed to avoid the violence, life during the Crusades wasn't exactly peaceful. Yet despite all the upheaval, life went on. People planted crops, raised livestock, crafted goods, and traded with others. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. Until next time, goodbye.